All right, bet, let's get it. So welcome to the backtesting training today. It's gonna be a dope training. We're gonna get into some tools. We're gonna get into like some actual recent price action from this past week. So you're gonna have some tools to use. You're gonna have some perspectives to be able to use, which is gonna be a very useful thing for you this week and moving forward, right? Real quick, guys. So when it comes to, I see Alex hopping on. Let me let her in real quick. So when it comes to back testing, right, there's definitely some tools that I like to use. So when it comes to indicators in general, I don't really use indicators as far as like my analysis too much. I mainly use them when I'm back testing or just to confirm certain things or just to, get an extra confluence here and there. But your analysis should always be with your naked eye, first of all, and then you can use indicators to kind of maybe give you a direction or give you just another confirmation. But what I have up here, guys, if you guys um don't already know, over here at the top, right, you can add, a bunch of different indicators. There's literally thousands from TradingView, from independent coders. Like there's so much stuff on there. The ones I'm going to go over today are the ones that I personally use mainly for back testing, right? So if you see up here, I have different templates with different indicators, right? I mean, shout out to HFX, don't really trade that no more, but if I wanted to, I already got my whole setup that is ready specifically for that type of action. But there's different things, right? I have my regular um template here, which is what I use most often, which is pretty much just like the volumes and an EMA, right? I have this one here that I use whenever I'm back testing market structure. And we'll see if I have enough time to get into a couple examples on how to back test market structure, but I use two different EMAs for that one. And then here I have my back testing template, right? So what I have here is literally two things. It's the sessions and days of the week. So days of the week is very simple. If you see at the bottom here, it's basically just telling you what day. It's breaking down the sessions into different days, right? Because obviously, if you just have the sessions indicator, then you can see like the London sessions and the New York sessions. But this kind of tells me in a very quick way um, what specific day I'm looking at. And then what I also like to do is I like to kind of just zoom in and focus on what happened this week, right? So anytime you're looking at this indicator, right, you're going to see that it goes from Friday to Monday, right? Because obviously there's no price action over the weekend. So this candle right here is where the market closed on Friday. And this is Sunday's opening candle, right? So if you're on Pacific time, this is that 2 p.m. candle. And from there, I'm able to see basically the whole week, right? It's a clean snapshot of like the whole of how the whole week played out. So with the dollar specifically, real quick, hold on, I got a couple other people joining. All right, bet. So with the dollar specifically, what happened this week, and you probably want to get in this habit of just doing this at least once a week, right? Is just kind of seeing how the previous week played out. So as we can see on the dollar, we had a down push from market open all the way till Tuesday morning, right? So all of Monday was pretty bearish. Right around Asian session going into London, we started to get a little bit of a retracement, but then we got another low, right? So Sunday, Monday, Tuesday was all pretty bearish. And then from Tuesday's late New York session, we got a high, right? So we managed to take not the high of the week. Actually, we did take the high of the week, which is here, right? So we created the high of the week on Thursday before coming down, sweeping that previous low. And now we're kind of making our way back up. In my opinion, this is a pretty sideways week. Like there's not really a clear direction that this market went, right? If you see where it started, it did make some moves, but it didn't move too much. Like that's not a lot of movement. It's important to see that, guys. It's important to have an idea of like what the week really did, right? Because that's what was going to set you up for next week. So in my opinion, this was pretty much a consolidation week. Yeah, there was moves that were caught throughout the week, but it wasn't really like an impulse week. Like you'll see if we go, for example, whereas last Sunday was here, right? This was a pretty big downtrend, right? So we started Sunday down, made a high that same London session, and then it was just a pretty much a bearish week all the way up until like Thursday. And then we got a nasty reversal. Like we closed Friday actually on a bullish note, right? By Thursday, you would have thought that this was a bearish candle on the dollar. And then literally just from Thursday to Friday, we made a new high. So it's important to be able to see those things. That's why I have this template with my sessions indicator and my days of the week, right? So those are pretty much the tools I like to use. When I get into back testing a little bit of the market structure, I will show the EMAs as well. But for now, I mean, let's just kind of show some more examples here on some of the currency pairs. We have USD CAD, right? So if dollar pretty much moved sideways, but USD CAD, gave us a low, gave us a new high, higher low, higher high, right? So even though the dollar moved sideways, USD CAD actually gave us some bullish momentum. And then now look at USD CHF, right? So this was USD CHF was basically just a bearish week. So it's interesting, right? Because we all know that with dollar correlation and that kind of thing, you're basically expecting anything with the US dollar quoted pair to move in the same direction. Like if the dollar index pretty much moves sideways, but the Canadian dollar, right, was able to gain some strength, and then the CHF actually lost some strength, right? CHF is very correlated with gold, right? So that's why this market went down, even though the dollar was pretty sideways. Gold's strength, right, pushed this market down. So this market moves opposite with gold. Okay. The reason for that is because the Swiss bank is one of the ones with the largest actual gold reserves, right? Like the US dollar used to have, but in Switzerland, they actually still hold probably the world's largest amount of gold reserves next to the US. So that currency is going to be pretty much very correlated with gold in the opposite way. And then USD CAD is actually correlated with oil, right? So if if oil is losing strength against the dollar, then USD CAD is going to move up. So when you see USD CAD, think USD versus oil, and when you see USD CHF, think USD versus dollar, right? So they're inverse correlating pairs. I don't want to get too difficult or too complicated with it, but just to show you guys, right, that even though the dollar was doing one thing, you're always trading it against something else. So USD CAD was an uptrend, and then USD CHF was a downtrend. And it's pretty hard to see that if you're just looking at the price action. Like you're not going to have really a good idea of how it kind of correlates with each other until you turn on something that's going to give you some guidelines where you're able to say, okay, this is where the week started, this is how it played out, right? So that's why I like the sessions. That's why I like days of the week for that kind of thing. Now let's go into back testing a little bit of market structure. So let's go on the daily. I mean, we could even go a little higher to the weekly. Let me hide these for now. I'm actually going to go here. And on the weekly with the dollar, we've been talking about the target of 107 or sorry 107.5 all the way up to 110, which is a pretty much a weekly imbalance, right? So we're expecting the dollar to continue to move up. We just had our second bearish close on the dollar, right? Out of this whole literally out of this whole uptrend that was, I believe, 12 weeks in a row that was bullish, we managed to get a bearish candle followed by a bullish, and then this last week was bearish as well. So I still expect us to make our way up there, right? So being that we're in such a high uptrending market, I like to go down to the daily now and kind of look at that with more detail, right? So here's that extension that we were looking at on the weekly. Obviously, we can see a little bit more detail here with just some more information, right? More candles. So what I'm looking at here with the dollar is obviously still an uptrend, right? So on, when was this here? Well, basically this was last week here when we came and swept this low, right? As soon as we swept that low, then we continue to move up from there. But this right here would be a very key market structure point on the dollar for me. Not only did we sweep this low, right? So as soon as we swept that low, we did see a nice reaction off of there. We still haven't necessarily changed character, in my opinion. The change of character would come after we get a 4-hour close above here, right? So we're still within pretty much that range from this low to this high. But in my opinion, this was just a manipulation, right? This was just a very intentional pullback here in order to allow us to keep moving to the upside, which we'll have to see. But now on the daily, my current range is going to be this low to this high here. I'll show you why. So when I go to the daily, right, I'm looking for, and here we could probably start from scratch with this one. So when I'm looking at the daily here, what I'm going to want to do, right, we already started with the weekly and said, okay, this is a bullish market. We have our bullish targets to the upside, which is that imbalance. So then when we start to kind of focus in a little bit more, I'm on the daily now. I'm not seeing, okay, so where are my larger pullbacks here, right? So I'm going to grab pretty much one of these circle tools, and then starting from the bottom, I'll just go, this looks like an important pullback. And this is in a bullish market, right? So if I'm looking at a bullish extension, then I'm looking at valid bearish pullbacks, right? Any of these pullbacks. So to me, these two look like the two valid pullbacks here on the daily. What I'm gonna do next, and that's just kind of what my eye is telling me. Obviously, like you guys see, these consecutive daily candles here. Those are all possible pullbacks, but they have to meet a certain amount of rules, right? This is no longer just like an objective thing where you're like, oh, this looks like a pullback, I'm going to call it a pullback and I'm going to treat it like one. You guys have these rules now to where you're actually able to validate to see if it's a valid pullback or if it's not. So first off, naked eye, right? And we could probably get a little text note going that we guys can keep this. So market structure, right? Step one is always going to be circle how, not valid but relevant, I guess, relevant pullbacks, right? So in my opinion, it's still right here at this point, it's still very like subjective. Like this is just what my eye is telling me that these two are pretty much the valid pullbacks, right? Maybe when we go into the rest of the rules here, maybe it turns out that these are not valid, and maybe it turns out that some of these are actually valid and I wasn't seeing it. So let's go into the other rules here. So the next rule, and this is where the indicators come in. It's very important that step one is no indicators, right? It's just what your eye is telling you. Is like just asking yourself what looks like a valid pullback here. And that's step one. So once you circle what you think is valid, then step two is we're looking for close below the 8 EMA, which I'll explain what that means. Right, so now I'm turning my other indicator here, which is meant for me to backtest market structure. And the main thing I'm looking at here, I'll turn off the 50 for now, is this blue line, right? This blue indicator is going to be an 8 EMA. Okay, so after, it's very important to do it in this order, right? So already circled what I thought were pullbacks. So now I'm gonna validate any one of these pullbacks according to this EMA, right? So with this EMA, if there's any other pullbacks that are closing below it, then I'm going to want to circle those as well. So if we just start from the bottom here, you see how this right here did not close below the EMA, right? It came down and touched it, actually, traded through it, but we didn't manage to close. So that's important. So that already invalidates this as a daily pullback, right? So we keep moving. And we see this pullback here also traded below the EMA, but didn't manage to close above. You're going to notice that whenever you're in a very bullish market, you're not going to get a lot of closes below the EMA. So here's two examples right here that, maybe before this call, you would have thought, okay, this is a pullback, right? We're seeing consecutive bearish candles or whatever looks like a pullback to you. But now I'm showing you how you actually validate it, right? So both of these right here are already invalid, okay? Now, any of this price action here, I'm not seeing any sort of closes below the EMA, so I'm not going to pay attention to it. Now, that first pullback that I circled, you see how we get that body close below the EMA, right? So that already, this candle already validates this. As far as rule number 2, right? There's a few rules here, but as far as rule number 2, I'm already seeing that, okay, cool. My eye, right? My eye is telling me that this pullback here was correct. I'm seeing that close below. All right, bet. So we keep moving, no close below. Technically, that could be a close below the EMA. So let's just go ahead and circle that. So maybe, maybe my eye didn't really see that, but maybe it is, right? Based off the other rules, we're going to be able to see if this is valid or not. And then we keep moving here. None of this is closing below, nothing, all the way till here, right? So obviously, you guys can see what I'm talking about, right? If not, definitely let me know here. But you guys see how we started by just circling what we thought. And then rule number 2 actually lets you know if you missed anything, or maybe like if this wouldn't have closed below the EMA, maybe my eye was like, okay, it's a valid pullback, but then the EMA really validated that it's actually not, right? So that is pretty much like in my opinion, the more important rules are 1 and 2. And then 3, I'm kind of going here on based off of, I guess, importance. I learned this from Valentino, by the way. I know you guys hear me talk about it all the time, and this is not the way he teaches it. He uses 4 specific rules, and I really recommend you study that before you even, take my way of doing it, or even start to build your own way of validating. Make sure you see what he's doing so you can understand what I'm doing, right? But the third one is going to be time frame above how do I say this? We need a candle to represent each pullback on the time frame above. Man, I can't type, bro. All right, so before I keep going here, I did forget to mention something that's also very important. The time frames that, and this is directly from Valentino, the time frames that we like to validate market structure on are going to be 4 very specific time frames, right? It's going to be I'll start with like the more important one, which is the daily, the 4-hour, the 1-hour, and the 15-minute, right? So those are the 4 time frames that you're going to be using these rules on, okay? Obviously, like, we already know there's 1 minute, 5 minutes, 30-minute, 2-hour, 3-hour, like literally whatever time frame you want, you can pull it up if you have that package, right? But when it comes to market structure, remember that you're only using these 4, okay? And that's important. It's very relevant to what you're doing with these time frames. Like, don't get me wrong. Obviously, you saw that we started with the weekly, right? Just to see kind of the higher time frame, momentum, direction, possible targets, things like that. And whenever I'm actually getting into a trade idea, that I'm going to use the 5, sometimes a 1 minute to actually enter the market. But when it comes to time frame, you're going to use these 4, okay? And these four basically was going to give you your setups, right? Again, you can use the higher time frames for those purposes. You can use the 5, the 1, the 10 if you want to enter. But when it comes to market structure, like I know I'm repeating it a lot, but make sure you're following the rules here, right? So I did want to mention that because when I say we need a candle to represent each pullback on the time frame above, right? And you are actually going to use the weekly to validate the daily, right? So this is what I mean. So whenever you have your valid pullbacks, right, based off the first two rules, then you're going to want to go one time frame up, which is the weekly, right? And in this situation, I know there's a 2-day, 4-day, whatever, right? But to validate daily market structure, you're going to go to a weekly, and what you want to see is a bearish candle for each of those pullbacks that we circled, right? So out of all those pullbacks that we circled, right, which ones have an actual bearish candle to represent that pullback, right? If we start from the bottom, this one that we circled here, right, this was one that my eye was telling me, hey, you want to probably look at this, right? It met the first two rules, right? It met the eye test and it met the AEMA, but it's not meeting rule number 3. There's no bearish candle here to represent that pullback, right? So if I go to the daily just to kind of show you what that looks like again, it was this move right here. So obviously, right, before you knew these rules, or even as you heard me start to break these rules down, you're like, okay, cool, that's a valid pullback, right? But based off of the rules, like it has to meet literally all the rules. If not, it's not valid. Since there's no bearish weekly candle here, then this one is invalidated. Okay. This one here is the one where my eye might have, not have told me that that was something worth looking at to begin with. But we did see on the daily, we did see that body, close just barely. So that's why we're like, okay, cool, let's look at it. But when we go to rule number 3, there's no bearish candle there, right? So that none of these are valid daily pullbacks. Like literally within this 12-week run inside the dollar here, we didn't see any valid daily pullbacks. Obviously, like look at how big this wick is, and there's a lot of retracement, and the market's always going to move efficiently to some extent, but based off our rules, none of this is a valid daily pullback. The first valid daily pullback came off of this candle here. So if I go back to the daily to see what that looks like, this right here is the first valid daily pullback, guys. So what I do from there, once it meets those 3 rules, is I'm going to label that as a daily structure. Okay, so we went from rule number 1 to 2 to 3, and based off of these first 3 rules, then this is the only pullback that was actually meeting that criteria, right? So I'll make sure let's see if we go to the daily here. So I can take a screenshot for you guys and send this out. That way you have a record of this. I'm using like my trackpad, so I'm a little slow right now. But does that make sense, guys? Does anybody have any questions? Like literally, this is the time to ask. This is something that completely changes the game. It might seem like a lot, maybe I'm not the best at explaining it. That's why I do recommend you guys watch Valentino. But this is definitely something that's very key. It's going to make whatever strategy you're trading a lot easier, right? It's going to give you a lot more clarity just to kind of know where you're at in the market. But does anybody at all have any questions? I could definitely, give you guys a minute here while I type the screenshot up for you guys. We'll just leave it like that. Make sure I hold this here. All right, so I got that. So cool. Now we're gonna go. Actually, I like to start from the top down, obviously. So now let's go see if we can find any valid 4-hour structures, right? So now that we got our daily low, right? This right here, and you're always gonna have to adjust it whenever you do it on the higher time frame and you go down, is not going to show you the exact low. So whenever you go down a time frame, you're gonna have to adjust it, right? So obviously we can start from like literally like the bottom of this impulse, right? All the way down here, like we did on the higher time frames. But and it would be good practice, don't get me wrong. So if you guys want to kind of use that to kind of get some work in, go to DXY and see if you can find these same levels that we're going to talk about. But based off my rules, where'd they go? Let's see. Let me just bring them a little bit closer. Or am I tripping? Anyway, all right, cool. So let's just look at, just a random piece of uptrend right here. What my eye is telling me, obviously, we already know based off the weekly and the daily that this is a bullish market. So you're kind of, just outlining the major swings, right? This was a break of this low right here. So we'll just basically stop at this high right here, and then we'll move forward in just a second. But if this is what my eye is telling me, you guys remember that rule number one is just kind of the eye test, right? So this is what my eye is telling me. If doing the path tool helps you out, guys, just to kind of outline the impulses, right? So impulse retracement, impulse retracement, impulse retracement. That way, when you're ready to circle the pullbacks, anytime you're circling pullbacks, you're looking at retracements, right? So, for example, this piece of price action here was a pullback, which we want to validate to see if it's valid or not. Here's another, and I'm mainly looking at bodies when I'm looking at this kind of thing, just FYI. But any of these are pullbacks that I want to see if they're going to be valid, right? So that's what my eye is telling me as of now. Let's go ahead and turn on the EMAs for rule number two. And just to make sure that these are valid pullbacks, but let's start from the top here. Let's get some good work in. So here, there's a candle close. So all right, just for good practice, let's circle that, because that might be something. I mean, it'll happen a lot of times where maybe your eye didn't tell you it was a pullback, but hey, this is meeting rule number two. So we have to kind of look at that, right? Also, this right here, I mean, we did get a body close below that, so I guess that's valid as far as now. And you're just kind of following that, right? I mean, we're not really going to have time to go into every single one of these, but you guys follow what I'm saying, right? Any of these things that are closing below that blue line, we want to investigate with the other rules here. All this stuff is basically sitting inside of this market structure. So this is all just one pullback, right? And then we made that new high, and then there's that pullback. Here's a new high right here, but I can already tell that this is not going to be valid because it's just one candle. It's going to be probably a 1 hour pullback, but it's not going to be there on the 4. We keep moving here and we don't see anything else up until this major pullback and then the new high, right? So let's just kind of stop right there for now. Right, so based off of those rules, this is what I'm seeing as far as things I want to validate. Meeting those two rules, right? So now for the third rule, we're going to go one time frame up, right? So if we're going from 4 hour, we're going to go to the daily to validate that. And we want to see if there's any bearish candles on the daily to represent these moves. So we basically started all the way down here, and we can already see that this piece of price action that we circled there is not meeting the third rule, right? So we started from the 4 hour, the daily is not showing us a bearish candle, so that's not valid. This very clear, obvious bearish candle, so that's valid so far. Whatever we circled here, right, there's no candle on the daily, so we're going to remove that. This pullback, there's at least one bearish candle, and this pullback, there's at least one bearish candle, and then this pullback, there's at least one bearish candle. So I know you guys are seeing that these aren't closing below the EMA, right? That's why it's important to do them in order, because we're validating 4 hour market structure. So on the 4 hour is where you need that close below the EMA, right? Which all of these that we circled are showing closes below the EMA. And then on the daily, they're representing 4 hour, or on the daily, there's a 4 hour candle to represent that 4 hour pullback. So now all of these are going to be valid 4 hour. right? So that's a valid 4 hour. I'm just going to kind of copy and paste some of these here, there, whatever the low is, right? These are all valid 4 hour pullbacks. We didn't back test any further than this, but if I go to the 1 hour, or let's go back to the 4 just to kind of see where these lows are at. Right, you always want to drag it to the lowest low of that pullback. So yeah, even though my eyes wouldn't have told me that this was valid, it meets all the rules. So it actually was here, and we can remove these now. Right, it's a process, fam, but it's really what's going to give you something with some actual structure to trade off of, not just like, oh, I think this is a valid 4 hour range, or I think this is a valid daily range. Like, believe it or not, it's probably one of the most important things, right? So those are, I'm just going to do this real quick just to see where my daily pullback is at, right? Which is going to be this low, right? So as you can see here, you know, just based off of what we're seeing here, this is a daily pullback, right? So this daily pullback, its whole intention was to take out this 4 hour low. Okay. So at some point, our 4 hour range was from this low to this high, right? We were expecting retracements, maybe expecting some sort of reaction off of this institutional candle right here based off of 4 hour structure. But whenever we got our body closed below that, then that invalidated that, right? So now once that structure is invalidated, we move to our next structure, which is this one, right? So right now the current range here is going to be from this low, right? From this valid 4 hour structure, God, bro. All right, all the way up to the highest high, right? So this is the current range that we are in. As we can see, we back tested this and it was valid up to some point, but as soon as we get that body to close below that level, then this was already taken. So all this was just internal liquidity of the actual true range, which was this low to this high, right? So this is where we're at inside of this 4 hour range. Anytime you find your range, the next thing I like to do is find the institutional area for that range, right? So in my opinion, this right here, these couple bodies are going to be what I consider my institutional area. So let's go here. Let's make sure we outline this as bullish, right? So now we have the range that we're working with, and we have our institutional area, right? The reason I'm liking that as an institutional area is because this was the low of this 4 hour range, right? Before this major extension was created. So we can see very clearly how these candles swept the previous low. I mean, it doesn't look like much, but this is already, let's see how much price action here. This swept about 6 days. So literally a whole week's worth of liquidity got swept by this down push, which is what created this bullish range that we're in. So that's why this, and I'm always looking for institutional candles right around wherever that range is, right? So for example, here, based off of this daily structure point, this is where I'd be looking for my institutional candles, somewhere in here, right? So this is where we're at. This right here was just an internal liquidity of the actual range, which was from this high to from this low to this high. So this daily was just to sweep that internal liquidity, right? Obviously, we know that the best thing we could possibly look for here would be, you know, for it to continue down and for us to see some accumulation somewhere inside this institutional area before we continue up. Okay. But we already know that if the market's very bullish, it's not going to give you those like beautiful retracements all the way down to the 786, 886. All it really needs to do is give you that 50, right? So from this low to this high, it already came and pushed down all the way below the 50. And another very important thing that happened is we swept a 4 hour low. Like whenever this body got swept right here, that's a very key thing, right? So it already reached fair value and already swept enough internal liquidity. So yeah, this would be like our best case scenario. But if you know how bullish the dollar has been, then we haven't been getting a lot of those retracements, right? So like look from this low to this high, like not even a 50% retracement before we continued up. Literally it's been that way basically like this whole second half of the year, right? From this low to this high, we barely got a 50% retracement, right? There's that internal liquidity that got swept before we continued up. So just kind of, I mean, on my calls on Sunday, we've been tracking this market like pretty much for over a year now, right? Every single week we're looking at what it's doing. So we're getting some good practice. And based off of my experience, whenever the market's not giving you those 50% retracements, then, you know, obviously if it does continue to push down there, we're going to play this area. But as of now, I already think we have enough to continue up, right? Especially because we have those targets to the upside, which was that weekly imbalance target. But let me remove the fib here just so you guys can see what's going on here, right? This was a valid 4-hour structure at some point until it got swept, right? So that's already enough for us to start to make our way up here, right? So now from this low to this high is our current daily structure. So let's pay attention to that now. All right, so this is my range on the daily from this low to this high. If I take my fib from that low all the way up to that high, right? We already did see pretty much a 618 retracement already. Let's go down to the 1 hour now, just to kind of see a little bit more detail. And this is what the 1 hour is looking on dollar. Right, so there's not really anything clear as far as institutional for me down here. I'm gonna be real. If I had to pick, like, you know, this set of candles here is what really swept this low, right? So there's that liquidity sweep of this low before the range was created. So that would be my institutional area. It's sitting all the way down at the 886. But what did we just say, right? Like the dollars is, as far as, you know, we can only expect the way it's behaving, you know what I mean? So based off of how bullish it's been, and I'm not really expecting it to come down here. Obviously, like I have my area ready if it does manage to come all the way down here. And I already know this is a very important level because it's a daily structure, right? So that's why it's important to know what time frame those structures belong to. But as of now, I do think we can continue to move up. I don't really see anything clear as far as like any sort of entries go right now for continuations, but I do see not only that imbalance to the upside that we're waiting for, but also like this liquidity up here, right? So again, this right here, I mean, is just repeating this pattern. Like this right here just swept these bodies, right? And now we're starting to see that move up. So, I mean, we can go all the way as low as the 15 to see if there's any structure there. I mean, my 15-minute range would be from this low to this high, which is this one here, right? So again, even there from this low to this high, we're already seeing that 618. So this could definitely just keep moving up from here, to be real. You know, all this is definitely liquidity right there. So a lot of targets to the upside. We're seeing some good sweeps of liquidity. In my experience, just looking at how it's behaving, I do think we're going to continue to move up. So I'll probably be looking for buys next week. I hope you guys learned a little bit as far as how I started from like the weekly to really get, you know, the perspective, went down to the daily to find valid structure points, down to the 4-hour to find valid 4-hour structures. And really like where I like to spend most of my time looking for structures is on the 4-hour and the 1-hour. Like with the daily, if you mark those up once, like for example, for next week, I already got my daily levels marked up. Right? Like this pretty much is going to be my range to play for the week. If we do manage to take this low, then the next place I'm looking for buys is here. And I'm expecting this high to get taken somehow, right? So if there was something clear, like let's just say there was something clear down here, or even anywhere in these areas where I could be looking to enter, our targets are pretty clear. I'm just not really seeing anything that's worth really outlining besides these two areas, right? This area is based off of daily, and this area is based off of 4 hours. So those would be the two areas that I'm kind of watching for as far as continuations. But I'm not going to hold my breath too much because, like I said, knowing the dollar, knowing how bullish it is, it might not give us those retracements we're looking for. So that's pretty much the lesson on that. Let's see if we can pull up another market here just to kind of give that example. Let's just say on a bearish now. So I'll go pretty quick with this one, guys. I know it's late, but let's get some good work in here, right? So we start on the daily, right? The daily is a bullish market structure from this low, right? Maybe this is a pullback. That's what my eye is telling me. I already back tested, any of this stuff, and none of that is. This was a valid daily pullback, and then all the way up to this extension, and now we're getting that next pullback, expecting another higher high, right? So simple as I can put it, that's what we'd be expecting here with USD CHF. Just so you guys can see why this pullback is valid, right? So we circle that, right, which is pretty much this pullback right here. Again, I'm mainly looking at like bodies. We can see that we did get a close below the EMA, right? There's that body close below the AEMA. And then the only other thing I would need to see would be a weekly bearish candle. So it's pretty interesting the way this is set up here. But from this basically like includes this candle and this candle, right? Since I circled from up here to down here, this bearish candle is part of that pullback, right? Whenever you see dojis like that, like if you can't tell whether it's bullish or bearish, just look at the volume. The volume is going to let you know that this was a bearish candle, right? So because there's a bearish candle to represent that pullback, then this is a valid daily structure point here. In this situation, my institutional is pretty clear. It's that big body candle here, right? So this candle is going to serve as my institutional area. My daily range going from this low to this high, right? So that institutional candle is sitting right at the 786, 886. So not only is this going to help you like find valid structure points, but it's also gonna let you know which institutional candles are valid. Like you guys can see that this candle is pretty much like where the majority of the volume came in, where most of this liquidity got swept right here. Like this, remember these are daily candles, right? So this is at least a week's worth of liquidity that got swept here based off this pullback, which created this next extension. And all this is just one extension. So this down push, right, this whole series of candles here is very important, right? You're going to start to see institutional candles even a lot easier once you're looking in the right places, right? So that's going to be my candle. As you can see, right around the 886, beautiful. Another thing that's going on here is a daily imbalance, which is sitting right above the 786 right here, right? So you can see that imbalance pretty close to that 786. We see that institutional candle, pretty big area there. So that's where I'm expecting USD CHF to go. If I look at the 4 hour just for some more detail, we can also see that there's a bunch of equal low liquidity sitting right above that imbalance. I mean, you could technically narrow down this imbalance to a 4 hour, but I'm gonna just leave it as a daily imbalance. We're seeing liquidity there, right? So the market has a lot of incentive for it to continue to push to the downside here, maybe give us some sort of accumulation inside this area before we continue to buy this market. So that's where I'm expecting this to go, right? Now, this is what's important here is as soon as, man, I mean, bro, if you guys watch Valentino, like he did 2 classes and they were both like an hour and a half each. So that just tells you how much information and how much value is really inside of this concept here, but basically, if I'm looking at a 4 hour range here, as soon as I would have seen a 1 hour break of structure, which probably happened here, right? If this is a 4 hour bearish candle, there's usually a 1 hour pullback inside that area, right? So as soon as I saw that 1 hour change of character, I'm already starting to look for sells. Obviously, we got another high, right? So then maybe our idea was invalidated. But then as soon as this change of character happened below these bodies here, right? As soon as this candle closed below that body, now I'm on like the on the 4 hour, I'm possibly bearish, right? So understand this. Like I want to make sure this is clear. Our daily range is going to be from this low to this high, right? So we already know that we're expecting the market to make its way below the 50, obviously, but hopefully all the way down here, right? So on the daily, if this is just one impulse, this is going to be a whole 4 hour downtrend, right? Or a full 1 hour downtrend. So now we're going to get more detail and start to look at that bearish structure on this 4 hour here, right? So as soon as we change character, then I'm looking at this bearish structure here. Basically, I mean, I don't know, like this is what my eye is telling me, right? Those are pretty much the impulses. So same thing now, we're getting good practice on a bearish structure now, right? So these are the pullbacks, right? Inside of a bearish structure, you're looking for bullish pullbacks. So I'm circling what looks like bullish to me, right? Step one. Step two, I'm going to turn on those EMAs to see if I missed anything. To be real, already know. I mean, maybe this one. This one's not. Anytime it's just one candle like this, it's usually not gonna be there on the daily. So let's see if this is right. Just to, I don't care if I go a little bit over the 8 p.m. mark today, because usually on my call on Sundays I have to like kind of rush because of the leadership call, but we'll get through this thought here and we'll call it a night. So, and I'm measuring this downtrend, right, all the way from this high all the way to where we're at now, right? So I'm following here. Yeah, this is a bullish close above, but if it's just one candle, that usually invalidates it, which we'll see in a second. And then we see this, since this is a series of candles here, right? So we got a series of candles here that close above the EMA. Then we're going to check it out on the daily. Right here, not a valid pullback, not getting a close above. Right here, not a valid pullback, not getting a close, not valid, not valid. Right here, we're getting a close above. And then maybe these two here, like you see how this is a close above and this is a close above. Maybe those two are worth looking at. So let's go ahead and check that out real quick. So if I circle this and circle this, now let's go to the daily and see if there's bullish candles to represent those moves there. So let's see here. All right, so right off the top, remember I said if it's just one candle, it's usually not going to be there on the daily. So that was invalid. Obviously, this pullback here was valid. You guys can see a strong daily candle, here on, I mean, not strong necessarily, but definitely a easy to see daily candle. And then this pullback is not valid on the 4 hour, right? You guys are following me, I hope. But because those are both represented on the daily, then this is going to be a valid 4 hour. And so is this guy there. All right, so let's go back to the 4 hour to see which ones are actually valid and kind of adjust our highs here. Right, so based off of our rules, these are the two valid 4 hour pullbacks here, right? So remember, when sitting inside of a daily range, right? On the daily, this is just one move, right? From this low to this high, where we're expecting that retracement to happen now, right? So as soon as on the 1 hour, 4 hour, we get that change of character, now we're following this downtrend all the way up until we get below the 50, or if you're expecting it to come up all the way down here, then you're following sells, right? Because obviously, like if we just traded off the daily, then you wouldn't, like you'd be waiting weeks for like trying to catch some buys down here. So as we know, there's some good opportunities on the 1 hour and the 4 hour that are going to be presenting themselves throughout this whole downtrend here. So now you know, okay, cool. Like if I'm getting into right first first time I'd really be looking to get into buys is after this change of character here, right? But any of these pullbacks here, like for example, boom, I catch a sell there. I already know that my target is all the way down here, right? Or like let's just say I catch a retracement here based off a valid 1 hour pullback. Boom, I already know where my target is all the way. Like you're having a good idea of where this can actually go, right? So these are important things to know. Like if you're getting kind of lost just within one time frame and you're doing all your analysis just based off of like what it's looking like to you on that one time frame, and you're losing sight of like, oh, what is the time frame up doing, what is the time frame before doing, like it's going to give you just a lot more clarity, right? But we're following this downtrend here. We already know that we're going to follow this downtrend at least all the way down to this imbalance. Like I definitely think these lows are going to get ran. So for that reason, you're still playing sells here, right? So based off of the 4 hour, right? If these are my 4 hour structure points, um, if I was to pick an institutional candle for this structure, it'd be this one. And for this structure, I'm looking at this area here. Right. So those would be my institutional candles for the 4 hour. Let's go to the 1 hour just to kind of see what these areas look like. And then you can pretty much narrow it down from there, right? From here, I'd probably narrow this down to like these couple candles here, right? This was that last up push before the move down. Obviously, if you're seeing any sort of imbalances, now it all starts to come together, right? This is all because we started with the higher time frame first, right? We make sure we know what's relevant and what's not. Here you can technically adjust it to maybe this 1 hour candle here, like this whole area might be your institutional area, right? So now we're getting a good idea of kind of what to play here, right? Now, if we just focus on this range for now, like my 4 hour range is going to be from this high, right? Whatever the highest high is, all the way down to this low. So now I have my 4 hour range from that high to this low, right? And I have my institutional candle sitting literally, it's covering like that whole area where we like to trade. But I'm going to pay attention to that. What else is going on there? I mean, you're seeing a lot of liquidity right inside this area here, to where the market probably want to make its way up there one more time, take out all that liquidity. Now, if this is a 4 hour or this is a 1 hour, right? This is a 1 hour range. I'm going to use the 15. Whenever the 15 gives me that change of character here, that's when this is ready to enter, right? Now I'm waiting for that pullback and targeting that next low, which should be taking me all the way down here. So based off of that analysis we did, like this is not even like the tightest, like we're not even going down to the 5, the 1 minute, but just off of this analysis here, like if we were to catch, let's just say we wait for this change of character, right? And let's just say we happen to catch a sell right here, right? Even if we place our stop loss above this wick, that's 28 pips. So to me, 28 pips is doable. But now look at what our target's like, right? We already know where we want to go, right? So you're catching over 100 pips here off of a setup that's in confluence with the higher time frame, right? It's a 4 hour downtrend that should be taking us it's a 1 hour downtrend, I guess, that should be taking us below these lows. It should be looking to fill this imbalance. It should be looking to mitigate this daily order block. So we're able to find the setup on the 1 hour. Again, like this is not even me talking about waiting for all this to happen, going down to the 15 and then possibly placing our stop loss here. Right now I'm risking what, 10 pips to catch 160. Like I'm talking about 15s to 1, right? Because we're gonna wait for the smaller time frame. Whenever you hear, oh, I got a 5 minute stop loss, but I'm looking at a daily target, bro. Like that's where the true risk to reward comes in, right? You have to be in confluence with these time frames, and it's gonna take you a little bit of practice to really maybe me sitting up here and talking this whole time is not making no sense to you, and I'm just confusing you even more. I'm sorry, but definitely watch Valentino. Definitely ask me questions. But you saw how we went from the daily and said, okay, cool. Like there's a bullish structure, right? All right, cool. So where's my valid pullbacks? Okay, this is my valid pullback. So based off of this valid structure here, my range is from this low to this high. Okay, after we make an impulse, then what can we expect? A retracement, right? So then we started to follow this retracement because we know the daily wants to come down to this level, right? You're always going to follow the higher time frames and what they want to do. So if we know that the daily wants to come down here, then why wouldn't you go to the 4 hour, right? Or why wouldn't you go to the 1 hour to find valid places for you to catch that ride all the way down there, right? Now, again, bro, this is just kind of one example. Let's just say, for example, um, we happen to get a body close above this 4 hour range, right? And that this gets invalidated. Then we'll be like, okay, cool. Then this whole price action that's going on here was just internal liquidity of the true range, which is from this high down to this low, right? So let's just say obviously we get a body close above here and this gets invalidated. All right, boom, we're not even worried about that no more. Boom, that structure is gone. So now we're playing the next structure, right? If we were to get a body close above, let's just say this candle here, which is the highest candle here based off this structure, or even this one, right? Let's just say you wanted to use this candle as the highest candle. You get that, and then this range gets invalidated. Maybe you play that sell, but it was a 10 to 1, right? Let's just say you lost 0.5% to make possibly 5%. You're gonna be okay with that, right? Now you play this trade, right? There's an imbalance here on the 1 hour. It's a valid, institutional. It's a valid 4 hour area, and then you wait for this to happen, right? This pulls up, continues to move past the structure that we thought we were going to play, but then it comes in here and now it starts showing you the distribution you were looking for, right? Then it gives you, there's a 1 hour waiting for a 15-minute change of character. We're playing sells, right? We're looking for a break and close below a 15-minute structure. You wait for that pullback, and now you're writing it all the way down here, right? So let's just say you catch a sell right around this area, stop loss above. I mean, even, let's just say you narrow it down to like that wick, and now you're able to ride this move down here. Now you're catching 230 pips. Now this is a 17 to 1 risk to reward ratio. Again, on a trade idea that's off of a valid structure, it's targeting a higher time frame target. So it's all in confluence, guys. Whenever you hear confluence, that's where it's at, right? Is understanding, this is the last thing I'll go over here, is the fact that if the daily looks like this, right? Let's just say the daily makes an impulse, and this is exactly what's going on with this market here. So daily makes an impulse, gives us a valid retracement point, right? From there, it gives you a higher high, right? So if this was our valid, this ain't gonna work like that, but let's just say this was our valid daily level, right? Because what we did is we circled this pullback, right? And then we used our rules to verify that this is a valid pullback, right? So now it tells us that this is a valid daily level. Right. So then what we're doing here, let's just zoom in just a little bit more. My bad, I'm hella slow with this tripod, but let's just say that was our valid daily pullback, right? So now we know that this is our valid range from this low to the highest high, right? And then we're looking for our institutional candle anywhere below the 618, ideally between the 786, 886, right? So let's just say there's that last bearish candle, somewhere in this area here, right? Which is going to be our bullish order block, right? What happens after the daily extends is you're going to expect a retracement, right? So we're expecting this market to come below the 50, hopefully all the way down here, right? So if that's what the daily looks like, let me do this real quick. just to kind of share a lesson here. Right. So if the daily's in blue here, right, and that's what it looks like, right, then the, let's just say 4 hour is going to look something like this, right? It's going to actually show you a little bit of a trend, some pullbacks, right? Whenever you get that change of character, right? If we're looking at a daily range from low to high, whenever you get that 4 hour break and close below a valid 4 hour structure, right? So we went on the 4 hour, we validated each one of these pullbacks to see which ones are valid. Whenever we get a body to close below a valid structure like here, and it's like boom, it's game time. Like now we're expecting that retracement phase on the dollar, right? So we already got a change of character on the 4 hour, which happened here, right? Now you're like, okay, cool. Now all I'm doing is I'm waiting for a pullback, right? There's probably going to be a 4 hour order block inside this area that you're going to be able to play, which is going to take you below that 50, hopefully all the way down here, which you'll then wait for accumulation on the 4 hour, right? You get that 4 hour change of character, and now you're playing the daily to the upside again. So that's the way the market works, fam. It's very fractal, it's very intentional. There could be a lot going on if you don't have a lot of practice with it. But once you really start to see like what's valid and what's not, then all the other noise is not really getting in the way anymore. You know what I mean? Like you know what's valid, you know what to pay attention to, and you know what to completely like disregard. Like it makes it a lot simpler for you. So I hope you guys learned something. As you can see, this whole thing is the same thing we were looking at here, right? There's our valid daily pullback. As soon as we got that change of character, now we're looking for sells, and our target is all the way down there. So I don't want to take up a lot of you guys' time. You guys are real ones for staying on here. So I'm not going to torture you guys anymore with it, but I hope you guys learned something. I did take one screenshot. That way I can send it in the chat for you guys. If that helps you out in any way, then great. But that's it for me, fam. Remember, Neri's running the market open call tomorrow. So hop on with her. I'll be on there as a student. And if you want to study this further, remember that Valentino Marshall inside the FRX channel. He's a smart money educator. Definitely somebody that takes the concepts and makes it very simple and gives it to you in a way that you're going to be able to use it, right? So I appreciate every single one of you. Thank you guys for spending your Saturday night with me. Man, some of you guys are on CST, some of you guys are on East Coast, so definitely means a lot. Hope you guys got some sort of value, guys. I'll see you guys on the call tomorrow, and let's have a good week. Peace out.